In this video, I'm going to be explaining what a hash graph is and why it may or may not overtake a blockchain in the future. So stay right there. Welcome, Joshua We Talk Crypto here. If you're looking to get more tips about the crypto space or the blockchain space and learn more about it, well, please subscribe to this video because I'm going to be posting content like this more often. And I'm going to get right into it. Hashgraph. A lot of people have been talking about Hashgraph as it pops out that it may overtake blockchain someday in the future. It's this new concept of a different type of architecture that confirms transactions, and it basically falls in the category of a distributed ledger public database. So does blockchain. It's just another architecture, that's all it is. So why is the hype around it so crazy? Why are people raving about it? IOTA, Byteball, something to be the few hash graphs or direct oscillographs out there that are known to be taking over blockchain, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. Why are people raving about this? Well, it gets down into the architecture, it gets down to the transactions, and it gets down to the nature of, is it really decentralized? A blockchain, and when I say these few things coming up, please don't get overwhelmed by the words I'm going to say, because a lot of them might be big, techie words. You don't have to worry about them. You just have to know how they differ, and I'm going to try to break that down for you guys in the most bare bones ways possible. So, a blockchain is known for three things. It has three main parts: consensus, algorithms, or management mechanisms, and it also has its structure, so what it's made of. Consensus mechanisms and management mechanisms are basically just for voting on what happens to the architecture, what happens to the blockchain. You are voting how the future of the chain will look. Is it going to fork? Is it going to stay together? Are we going to implement data sharding? But don't worry about all those words right now. It's just voting to see how the blockchain will turn out. And then you have the actual structure. This is things that take into account its transaction times, its potential to scale, how it confirms a transaction. So that's it. A blockchain compromises of those three things. And you put the two words together, and it kind of might help you break it down a little bit better. A blockchain, a block, a stream of transactions that are just all blocked together. A chain, blocks connected in a linear function in the chain. So that's what a blockchain is. Put those two things together, there it is. Bunch of transactions in a chain going linear in a straight line. So here's where a hash graph comes in. Now you've seen different names for it. You'll see it called a graph, a hash graph, or a direct acyclic graph. These are the three names you're mainly going to hear for it. Graphing technology. So here's where hash graphs differ. They are not a block of transactions in a linear line. In fact, they are, and I'll use IOTA's Tango as an example because it's the most known. A Tango, the transactions aren't running in a straight line. They are a bunch of curves running and meeting each other at certain points. Reason for this, there are no blocks, so therefore miners aren't confirming transactions. And a standard blockchain, whether it's proof of work, proof of stake, an individual machine is used to record these transactions. So a miner's computing power or proof of stake allows you to affect the consensus or the voting of what happens to the chain. In a hash graph, it doesn't happen that way. There are previous transactions and there are current transactions, and the transaction that I may be making to you, I may be sending you $5. That transaction is confirming a transaction that happened in the past. So what this means is basically, and this is just a bare minimum way of explaining that, hash graphs benefit from more usage. So the more people that use it, faster it becomes, the more throughput it can handle, and the less latency there is. Transaction times get faster and transaction fees get lower the more people use it. In fact, a lot of this technology is even feeless. So the more people that use it and use the network, the better. Whereas blockchain, depending on its scalability potential, the more people that use it, the transaction times can get slower and the transaction fees can go up. That's why Hashgraph has become so popular. There are no miners confirming transactions. Only current transactions confirm past transactions. Another thing with consensus here is that a lot of people have argued that Bitcoin is not exactly decentralized. Ethereum is not exactly decentralized. As long as there are people who hold large amounts of Bitcoin or large amounts of hashing power or mining power, they decide what happens to consensus. They decide if the program's going to fork. They decide if Bitcoin's going to be together. Is it going to go to Bitcoin Gold? Is it going to go to Bitcoin Silver, Platinum, all that stuff? They decide what happens to that. A Hashgraph, you can't have that happen. It's resistant to these types of malicious consensus spammers. I'm not saying that Bitcoin is malicious, but it is held into question whether it's decentralized. So will it overtake blockchain? Well, that's to be determined. I'm not sure. So with all this good stuff about Hashgraph, right? People are thinking, it definitely has to take over blockchain in the future. Blockchain can't be sustainable, and it has trouble scaling. So therefore, Hashgraph, DAG's directly cyclic graphs must take over blockchain, right? Well, not exactly. You have to kind of step back and think about it for a little bit. Bitcoin is where it is today because of network effects. All this means is that it had first mover advantage into the distributed ledger space, public databases spread across the world. It had first mover advantage to that. It was the first man in. Therefore, it didn't have to do a lot of marketing. All you heard was Bitcoin, and then as soon as people heard this name, they got interested. Oh, this is the first to ever do that. This is the first distributed public ledger that's actually successfully been out there. And although this technology has technically been out for a couple of decades, you had BitTorrent out there, people are just starting to come onto it now because this is the first time cryptography is used to actually confirm monetary transactions. That's never been done before. So you're using an old technology, but you're using it to do something new and economically important, which is capturing transactions. Now you have Hashgraph, and although it's a new spin on an old technology, and by the way, Hashgraph has been around for decades too. It's nothing new. It's nothing new at all. It just proposes to be more efficient than blockchain. Well, guess what? Bitcoin has the network effects. It has the most people using its platform. It's open source. It has developers taking its code, improving upon it, building other coins, or improving upon Bitcoin's network itself. Hashgraph is not really open source yet. There are like 3 main companies working on it. One doesn't propose any cryptocurrencies for its sales, and the tech is proprietary. And there's 2 others. One aims to be open source, which is IOTA, but it hasn't done yet because it's not finished perfecting the technology. And then there's Byteball. Byteball would be more open source, but it doesn't have the marketing that IOTA has or Bitcoin has. So those are your 3. There's not that many in that space. Blockchain has tons of people promoting it. It goes back to this book that I've read by Peter Thiel called 0 to 1. Peter Thiel's super smart, co-founded PayPal with Elon Musk. And in 0 to 1, he talks about companies that have benefited from first mover advantage and why they're so successful, because there's very little competition in their space. That being Google and Facebook formed a duopoly in advertising, and they own like 80% of the market, while as the rest of the market is split very few between other companies. Google's the first search engine. They're pretty much a monopoly now because they were the first to establish the search engine and make it successful and take it off the ground. Well, in this scenario, in this analogy, Bitcoin is that Google. It has been first mover advantage, and it's been here before Hashgraph. And the thing about network effects, the more people that use the network, the more beneficial it comes, no matter even if it's not ready. So Hashgraph could be a more perfected technology right now. It could be more efficient, but because it doesn't have the first mover advantage, tough to kind of visualize how in the future what's really going to happen, or if it's definitively going to take over Bitcoin. And that's what I have trouble wrapping my mind around. I want to know what you think. If you think Hashgraph is going to overtake Bitcoin, I'd like to hear why. Please leave a comment if you think this is going to happen, or if maybe you think the blockchain is just going to be here forever, or if Hashgraph and blockchain are going to split half and half. Maybe blockchain controls one part of the space, Hashgraph controls other. So very interested to see what you think. If you found this helpful, please drop a like and subscribe, because I'll be posting content like this more often, and always appreciate you watching. Thanks, Josh out.